please welcome Jeff Kortes. Jeff.
Thank you. I learned the key to employee retention more years ago than I care to recall. I was running around the track at the high school that I attended, and as I rounded the turn that headed into the home stretch, I see this guy by the finish line, this big guy, and he's staring at me. And I'm running down the track, and he keeps staring at me. I'm starting to wonder what's going on. And as I got about 10 feet away from this guy, he shouts out, "Hey kid, how much do you weigh?" And at the time, before I bulked up, I was a strapping 5'2" and 103 pounds. And he says to me, "Wow," he says, "that's fantastic." I said, "What?" He says, "That's fantastic." He says, "I'm the new wrestling coach from Iowa." And he says, "I need somebody to wrestle 98 pounds for me this year." I said, "You want me to lose 5 pounds?" He says, "Yeah." Well, I'm a city kid, was a cross-country runner, and I knew nothing about wrestling. And the prospect of rolling around on the mat with a bunch of sweaty guys really did not appeal to me. And I said, "No," I said, I'm not in. I'm sorry. I start to run off, and as I'm down the track, he yells, "If you come out, I'll guarantee you get your letter." I stopped dead in my tracks. I turned around. He says, "Yep." He says, "I'll guarantee you get your letter." And at the time, a letter was a chick magnet. And let me tell you, when you're 5'2" and 103 pounds, you need all the magnetism you can get. So I went out. He said, "I'll teach you all the fundamentals." He says, "I guarantee you will be successful." Well, that first year, I went 6 wins and 12 losses. I mean, I got the snot kicked out of me. But I stuck with it, worked on the fundamentals, and the next year I went 17 wins and 6 losses. And I went head-to-head with a guy who ended up winning the state title. Fast forward a few years, I'd always remember about the fundamentals. I was a very young, 22-year-old employee relations supervisor with the American Crystal Sugar Company up in Drayton, North Dakota. Well, we hired 200 seasonals a year, so turnover was a real problem. Well, I remembered the fundamentals, and it became very clear we were losing people, and I wasn't hiring the right people because I was hiring for skills and not for fit. And as soon as I started hiring for fit, our turnover dropped. Well, fast forward a few more years. My daughter taught me a very, very important lesson. It wasn't a lesson I necessarily wanted to learn. But one day, I made the mistake of going shopping with her. And as we're walking into the mall at Macy's, I should have known better because the shoe aisle is right on the left-hand side. And as we walk in, my 23-year-old daughter, her eyes just light up. And like a laser beam, she's over at this pair of black Steve Madden stiletto heels. She grabs these things and she says, "Dad, check these out. Aren't these hot?" Yeah, I guess so. And before I can even finish, she's waving at the clerk and says, "Do you have these in a size 7? Clerk checks the machine and says, "Yes, miss, we do." Goes in the back, gets the shoes, brings them out, gives them to my daughter. Daughter tries on one, checks herself out in the mirror, puts the other one on, checks herself out in the mirror, and then kind of prances around in front of the mirror. And she says, and I knew I was in trouble, she says, "Daddy." It was like this freight train. I knew it was coming, but I couldn't stop it. She says, "Daddy," she says, these would go great with my black clubbing dress." She says, I don't suppose you'd buy them for me, would you?" She says, "I really can't afford it with grad school and all." Well, I'm a soft touch because I've got an older son and then a younger son, and my daughter is sandwiched in between. And she's got me wrapped around her little finger. So I reach for my wallet, hand the clerk my credit card, and $129 later, my daughter has her pair of Steve Madden black stiletto heels. For you guys in the audience, it is Steve Madden, not John Madden. Well, that next Saturday, black clubbing dress is on, puts on the shoes, goes out, has a great time. No problem. Following Saturday, black clubbing dress, different pair of shoes. I say, hey, Ellie, where are those black shoes that I paid $129 for? Well, it's not Daddy anymore. It's, well, Dad. She says, I wore them to the bar, and she says, you know, she says, you're standing by the bar and you're dancing, and she says, you know, I think I'm a size 7.5 and not a 7. She says, I just can't wear them. They bind on my feet. Well, so what happens? The shoes go in the closet, never to be worn again. Well, the problem was, I'm thinking to myself, what a twit I was. When she's screaming for the size 7, I should have said, hey, get out that device, that Brannick device, and measure your foot. You know, figure out what size your foot truly is, because they got to fit. Well, the lesson I learned, and the key fundamental I learned and reinforced it from my days at American Crystal Sugar was, you have to hire for fit, because fit is the most important element in retention of an employee. So the lesson I want you to remember when you go away from here, when you're hiring employees, don't be a twit, hire for fit. Thank you very much.